Chatting with ALTA Swanepoel from ALTA Swanepoel and Associates. She's a former public prosecutor who became involved in road transport through her dealings with drunken, reckless and negligent driving cases. And she was also part of the team that drafted the Road Traffic Acts of 1989 and 1996. She specializes in road traffic and transport legislation and is involved in training initiatives for traffic officials and the transport industry. She is an acknowledged expert on ALTA. ALTA, welcome to the Truckx show. Good to have you here. Tell us, when is full ALTA legislation, including the license points demerit system, likely to be introduced?
The government promised us it will be during this financial year, which would be before March 2017. And due to the fact that the legislation is currently being finalized in Parliament, I think for the first time we have a sporting chance of that actually happening.
It's been delayed for quite some time.
I think the Act's 18 years old now.
Is that so? Yeah. What is the aim of the legislation?
The aim is to try and get people to behave, not only paying their traffic fines, but also to reward them if they actually start complying with the legislation, and through a demerit point system, attempt to not only get them to not commit traffic offences, but to remain legal citizens on the road, which currently is not the case. Given
the troubled history of ALTA during its pilot phase, do you see the system working in the real world?
Yes, I think all the stuff that happened to ALTA actually is stuff on the side. It's not the actual ALTA legislation. The actual ALTA legislation, I think there's no problem with it. Lots of politics surrounding it, lots of other issues that were actually deviating from the main aim of the legislation, and that caused a situation where traffic department started feeling that they are losing money because ALTA is not working properly. When ALTA was written, the South African Post Office was still quite an geared up institution, and they are a vital cog in the wheel to get the legislation going and everything being in place. And unfortunately, due to the situation that's been there over the last few years, although ALTA itself is not really the problem, getting the tickets to the people is the issue, and that is what has caused many of the problems in the system.
And what kind of impact do you think that full implementation of ALTA will have on the road use?
Well, if it works the way it's supposed to, and it does not turn into an additional option for corruption and so forth, I think ALTA will have an excellent result, because the whole purpose of the legislation is to get people to behave, to have your trucking and your bus companies working together with their drivers, because now they both have something to lose. Our current system, unfortunately, targets the driver very much, but not so much the company that is responsible for the use of the vehicle, getting the money out of the vehicles, and maintaining them properly. And with ALTA, if you do not both work together, both the driver and the operator gets punished in the process.
Okay, so the system will change.
The system will change, yes.
Good. From a legislative perspective, what do you think South Africa needs to make our roads safe?
We mustn't have any more legislation. We must actually start using the legislation we do have. Just in the Road Traffic Act alone, there are 2,500 things you can do wrong. About 100 of them are being policed on a regular basis. If we really start using the existing legislation, ensuring that we have law enforcement that's not mainly focused on speeding and those kind of things, I think we will be in a much better place than what we are now. We don't need new legislation, we simply need to actually use the stuff we already have.
So from the legislative point of view, the legislation is good, it's proper implementation, that's the key.
That's the key. South Africa is actually one in areas where they've evaluated our legislation. We have got one of the best sets of legislation in the world. It's the execution and the use of the legislation that's the problem.
Also, thank you very much for being on the Truckx show.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.